House Bill 579, the clerk will read.
Representatives Brody, Sane, Zinger, and Neal Jackson. House Bill 579, a bill to be entitled Sedimentation Act and other involved changes. The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Gentleman from Union, Representative Brody, is recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just briefly, I put this on your desk and we'll ask you to take a look at it. The reason I put it down there, it's a test. All three pictures, there's something wrong with them. And those in construction will probably pick it up right away, but others not, and I'll tell you what it is towards the end. I support the Clean Water Act in construction, and part of what you see in here is this is what's called silt fence. This is part of a measure that helps keep sedimentation out of the waterways from land that's been disturbed. Reason I say this is I wanted to start with the EPA is the one that governs the Clean Water Act that started out, and sometimes they do some really strange things. And some of the strange things amount to things where they require us to do something, you scratch your head and say, this doesn't make any sense. And so this is federal government, so I think everybody can at some point agree that that can happen in federal government. So 579 is a bill that addresses one of those things that EPA forces on us through DEQ, and in particular, this is what's called redundancy of permits. And if you're building a house, and you first of all have to get what's called a sedimentation and erosion control plan, you can get that through the local government, and it's a permit, and you have to pay a fee. Along come about 2019-20, EPA decided, well, we're going to add on something new to us, and it's called what's called the NCGO1, which is a sedimentation and erosion control permit with a fee, doing the exact same thing as the local program does. So I thought to myself, okay, what is the process? Maybe they're reasonable over there at EPA, and I can put together something that says, why don't we, instead of using 2 permits and 2 fees, why don't we just use one, in particular the federal recommended program, and 1 fee, and let's enforce that. Well, the problem is we got to get EPA's permission to do that. So this bill says that we are going to eliminate the local sedimentation and control program in lieu of and replace it with the state program. Local government needs to accept that, but in order to keep things kind of rolling, we're still going to allow them, the local government, get their fee, but we're just not going to have 2 permits. So that's what this bill does, and it also requires us to make a request to EPA in order to have that done, and that's part of this bill. So I ask you to vote in favor of this. Now, to the picture itself. I don't know if anybody spotted it. Once again, EPA makes you scratch your head. What's wrong with this picture? Well, if you know anything about construction, you'll know that unless water decides to rapidly go uphill, this silt fence does absolutely no good. It is set up to prevent water from going uphill and flooding into the local area. So, in addition to that, some may say, well, what does it cost to do that? They made us do it, but it has a cost. Well, this particular one, it was on a road that I took every day to get here from Charlotte area, and it's 1.5 miles long, and at $4.50 a linear, it costs $35,000 to put that fence up. Nothing. Now, several years ago, we put in legislation to prevent, say, we can't do that anymore. We can't install silt fence to prevent water from going uphill, which we're still working through and making sure everybody hears it. But in addition to that, you might say, well, what happens? Well, at the end, when I went through here, one day, I went up on a Monday and it's there, and when I came back on a Thursday, it's gone. It stayed up there for less than a week, And when they tore it down, they tore up a little over 3 tons of iron, 1 ton of wire, and about 300 pounds of pure plastic fencing. And you say, well, why don't we recycle that? The problem is the method of affixing the silt fence to the wire and post would make it basically unfeasible to have somebody spend the time to go do that. So that's the kind of thing that when I come through with things like this, it's saying that maybe there's something really strange, and it has nothing to do with the effects of on the Clean Water Act. It just plain makes sense and goes for efficiency. So I ask for your support on 579, and we'll wait to see what the EPA says about our requests. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the lady from Mecklenburg, Representative Bell, rise?
To debate the bill.
The lady has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to thank Representative Brody because he listened to a lot of the concerns that the environmental people did, DEQ had, and he made some changes with the bill. But I think that, unfortunately, this bill, 579, is going to be a further erosion of the quality of water in the state, and no pun intended. But when he is talking about the permit, we do. So right now, if we disturb when we are doing construction, wherever it is, it's over an acre, then you have to do a couple permits. One that he talked about, what's going to happen? There's going to be stormwater. That's a volume of water going. We got to take care of that under the Clean Water Act, because that water's going to have to go somewhere. The other permit that we have to have right now is the erosion and the pollution control. Where is that going to go? Those aren't exactly the same, but they're complementary. And so by eliminating that and saying that we only have to have one of those permits, that's really not true. What we have to do under that erosion and pollution of water, we have to have some kind of a plan to have, just like we do under the Clean Water Act. So that needs to be in place. The other problem that I have, and that I think people have with this bill, is that it's saying, okay, now we can eliminate that and let's go do the permitting in the local folks. And here's how much you're going to be able to charge as a locality in order to look at these permits, make sure the plans are there that we think that are necessary. And those are very low, and there is a limit to that. That more than likely what local authorities are going to say is, and they can say, no, we're not going to set this program up, but they're going to probably say, no, we don't have the funding in order to do this, to go out to those sites and do this permitting process. So we're going to default to the state. Well, okay, the DEQ does not have, and the state does not have the resources. They don't have the people in order to do that and to cover those. So that's going to be a problem. And we have not funded them. They're not going to do it. I think that this is a problem. I appreciate everything that Representative Brody did, but I think that we don't need this. We've got to make sure that we know that we have to have beautiful water. This is a state that is gorgeous, and we know we've had this pollution, and we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that that we take care of our waterways and we take care of what we do and have responsible development. So thank you very much. I hope that you vote against this bill. Thanks.
For what purpose does the lady from New Hanover, Representative Butler, rise?
Question for the bill sponsor.
Representative Brody, does the gentleman yield?
Oh, yes, sir.
He yields.
Here with these inquiries, or what will be the consequence of a no from EPA?
Okay, if they say no, then we stay what we're doing. We have the dual permits, redundant permits, and that's just the way it is. If they say yes, then we adopt the NCG01 as the main permit, and then, but in the bill it says that the locals will still collect a fee as was set up couple of years ago already, and they will collect a fee to administer the program. That's how it'll work.
Quick follow-up, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yield? He yields.
So we're essentially just asking for permission to do what this bill says. Could we not have done that in an intra-agency way rather than trying to put forward a fairly enormous bill for that purpose? Couldn't we have just asked a pretty please of EPA rather than this? This seems like an awful lot of work for us, especially if it's going to be a no.
Well, we can, but there's no way to require DEQ to do that process unless we tell them to do that. That's why the bill is. We have to direct DEQ to approach EPA and to ask that permission, and that's done by the general agreement between EPA and North Carolina. That's the process that's supposed to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Question for the House. Passage of Senate Bill 579 on second reading. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Clerk will open the vote. Cotham, aye. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 74 having voted in the affirmative and 39 in the negative. House Bill 579 passes second reading without objection. Be read third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Question for the House. Passage of House Bill 579 on third reading. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. House Bill 579 having passed its third reading, ordered sent to the Senate.